Last week we had the eagle, and you focused on actually drawing the eagle. And this week we're going to be looking at the bald eagle's habitat and use that as a way to explore compositional elements in your drawing. So we'll go over some of the things that you learned with Val last week as well. But we'll be looking at Robert Bateman's work and going into more of compositional elements that you can bring to your drawings and your nature journals. Because I'm out in the field a lot, I work with the Nature Sketch Journal. I'm just going to show you a sample page. Now, oh, sorry, Jeff, and I'm forgetting that I need to give you a heads up as to when I'm doing that. I would just wonder if we could use the overhead camera for a second here.
There you are.
Okay, so on the screen now, this is just a page from one of my Nature Sketch books. And I think when you did the class last week with Val, she had suggested that if you like, you could put your eagle head down in one part. Now, this is entirely up to you. This is a learning session. You can use full pages. If you want to try and do sort of like a nature sketch page of eagles in their habitat, this is just an example of some of the ways you can set it up. It's kind of fun sometimes to use little frames around details. And yeah, so I just showed you. But again, your choice. But if you want, and you have started with your eagle head down on the lower left, the things we can do today can be scaled in around it, or you can do the whole thing. Given time constraints, we'll be working relatively small because I've got quite a few exercises for you, but that are habitat related. So I'll just move on to the next slide here. And what I want to do tonight is to start with a gesture drawing. And I love gesture drawing out in the field and in general. And for people who've done before, it's a really good way to loosen up your drawing arm and brain, just to get you into the act of drawing. And then the other thing we'll do is review the elements, the art elements that you learned last week. We'll be using those again. You'll be using those throughout the 4 weeks that we work together. And then I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the compositional elements, directional line, the rule of thirds, and the use of point of view. And these are things that you can use for a quick sketch in your Nature Sketch Journal, or if you're establishing the scaffolding for a much bigger painting or drawing. These are things that you can just use with all your drawing. So on the screen now, I've got examples of some of Robert Bateman's gesture drawings. And if you look at them, I love it when I show the kids these pictures when we're out, because you know, I said, well, what do you think about that drawing? And they said, well, it's like scribbling. I said, well, yeah, it's scribbling, but when you look at it, what's really fun about gesture drawing is that it captures the energy and the essence in very few, very rapid lines. I have exercises where we do gesture sketches we'll do it 5 minutes, then we'll do 1 minute, then we'll do it 30 seconds. And you have to get the essence of something. So you're really going for the essential lines. If you notice, I quite like this one of the kingfisher because it's very, very simple, but you can see the energy in that gesture sketch. And then if you look at the one on the lower left is sort of the most minimal, but you can still tell clearly that we've got a forest in the foreground. This is actually from a clear cutting that he was doing gesture sketches of. And the one on the right, the immature bald eagle, in addition to the loose movement, there's not a lot of energy in that because it's a static bird, but you can see the use of values as well. So even in a very quick sketch, he's got the light and the dark. So you can tell that in the center part, you can feel the weight in that image. It's also, when you're out in the field, and I think Val showed you some samples from Robert Bateman's sketchbooks last week, it's perfect for moving subjects. So if you're trying to capture the overall shape of a bird in flight or a deer that's moving, anything that's moving, this is where gesture sketch is a really great technique. Okay, so the photo on the screen now is actually one I took last year in Squamish on the mainland in BC. And at this time of year in particular, it's a great place to see bald eagles. They're solitary birds, but around spawning time with the salmon runs, you can see tons of them together. And I kind of like this one because it reminded me of the gesture sketch that Robert Bateman did. So what I want to do to start today is we'll do a gesture sketch. We're going to use this as our subject. And I think if I sent some black and white, did you get those okay? The ones that I sent as attachments? Great, thank you. It's just so that you have something as a reference. Now we're going to imagine, I think if we were at this angle, we'd probably be up in a forest fighting tower, looking for fires. If we were that high up, we're out in nature now, and we're going to just start by doing a gesture sketch of this, and we'll just take 5 minutes to do it. So actually, if I could have the overhead again.
Would you like a split where you can see the power? Like the...
Oh, so I have something to look at. That would be great. Okay, that helps for everybody too. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now, again, if you wanted to do this on sort of a nature sketch page, you could just make a small box and limit yourself to that. And this is only going to be a 5-minute exercise. Or if you want to go nice and just go really loose, this will be us warming up our drawing arm and brain. So I'm going to start, and I'd like you guys to start too. Everyone start on this. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to I think I'm going to start with a relatively small box. And then what you look for, again, even in a gesture sketch, I forgot to mention the other thing about a gesture sketch is you sort of leave the pencil on the paper, and it's a very quick thing, and you kind of block in. I'm just going to block in the shapes here of the cedar. We can see that's a cedar on the left-hand side because it's got these wonderful swags. With the way the branches swag like that, you can tell that it's a cedar. And then we've got the dead tree that we've got it's also a very good hand-eye coordination exercise. We've got the branch for our eagle there and the branch coming down. So yes, just keep looking and going just keep that arm nice and loose. Don't worry about it being perfect. It's, as kids say, it's like scribble. And then in behind here, we've got pine trees, slightly different. And then we've got I love the legs on this bald eagle. They look like trousers. He's got his pants. We've had some terrific winds in Victoria these last couple of days. And when I was driving home yesterday, I saw 2 of them just off the coast soaring above. And he's got quite it looks almost like he's looking down at his talons. He's got his head right down there looking down. Now they also have remarkable eyesight. They can spot a flick or sort of the flash of a fish in the water up to half a kilometer away. Their eyesight is that good. So, and then, yeah, just very loosely put the color in the branch. And remembering some of your values, you can go back over and start to put in some of the values. You can see the trunk of the cedar tree on the left there, and the cedar boughs. And if we were doing a more detailed picture, you've got the lovely pattern in the background of the sort of the triangular shapes of the pine trees. Very distinctive pine forest in the background there. So that is, you know, a sample of a quick and dirty gesture sketch. But it has, again, I just enjoy this. I really love it. I often do gesture sketches before establishing, you know, the scaffolding for a picture that I want to do to loosen up my drawing arm. Okay. Can I have a peek at some of the work, some of your sketches? Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah, lovely and loose. Yeah. Oh, this is the fun part. I love it. Oh, lovely. Yeah. Well done. And sorry, I wish the names don't automatically come up underneath, so I would love to address you by your names, but yes, nice work. Okay. Now here's another photo from Squamish. And if you look very, very carefully in that picture, you can see a bald eagle in the middle. That's a bald eagle, that little black dot that's floating above the tree. I wanted to include this one because I saw that Val had done that really neat value bar with you last week. And being able to see the values in your drawings is a really important thing to work on over and over. And it's like the, even with the gesture sketches, it's the ability to see directional line. But with this one, you can see this also I thought was quite a nice example of that atmospheric perspective that she mentioned last week, where at the front of the image, you've got the darkest darks, which would be like your 5. Although in this instance, you do have some deciduous trees in the front, so it looks a bit lighter, but it is the clearest and the darkest. And then it gradually goes back into that lovely sort of atmospheric fog at the back. So, and this again is Douglas fir. It's that distinctive shape of the Douglas fir tree, which of course is really important in this part of the world for the bald eagle, because it's on the coast, we have all the Douglas firs, which are perfect. It's the size and the height and the strength of the trees that are important to the eagles, because they need a 360-degree vision. And then, of course, when they're building their massive, massive nests, they need really strong trees. So in our area, this is the most common tree used by the bald eagles for nesting. Other trees that they use are, they use cottonwoods and oaks, and I think there are a few other trees, but they do have to be really tall. So for this exercise, we're going to do another little sort of like a gesture, but a gesture drawing, but we're going to focus on the values this time. Really work your values. And the other thing I noticed with Val last week, you were learning how to do your values. Are we all using one? Does everybody have an HB tonight? Is that everybody's working with an HB pencil? And of course, one thing I wanted to introduce this evening in terms of values is, I could just have the overhead, Jeff, again for the, oh, there they are. It's right there. I didn't have to ask for it. So I'm sure people have seen these sets, and you can go from 12B to 12H. The great thing about the HB that we're working with is that like the F and the HB, these are really good for writing with. But you have in your arsenal, if you want to, you're going to be working more with pencil drawing. You've got this incredible range. And forgive me if Val mentioned it last week, but I'll mention it again, that just sort of an easy way to remember, the B's could stand for black and the H stands for hard. And if you look in the middle, there's usually an F. I've got an F here as well. And that actually, a good way to remember that is fine point, because it can be sharpened to a very fine point, and it's really good for architectural drawing. And if you have a chance to practice with a few different kinds of pencils, you'll get a feel for them. The great thing about the HB, I like to call it the mighty pencil, is just that we can get so much out of one. And when you were doing your value bars last week, I saw she had that neat technique where you start with the lightest and then you just keep adding the graphite. Now, of course, if you have a set like this, you go for your 6B, because that'll give you the super black that we need for the darkest parts of this picture here. We can get the same technique with one pencil just by layering and layering and layering. If you've got a range of pencils like this, then you go for your softer ones for the darker, and you get those effects a little more quickly. So if you want to, we'll try our hand now with the image of the fog coming in over, and this will be, again, it's going to be like a gesture drawing, but we're going to focus on the different values in this picture. I'm just going to make a little rectangle there. And if we stick with one pencil and we use like the technique you were learning last, you can layer a very light layer of graphite. I'm working on quite smooth paper this evening. Well, I should say white. It's very smooth paper. And another cool thing when you're experimenting with your drawing is that different papers have different tooth. And so if they've got any texture, the texture grabs the graphite. So you get some neat effects that way as well. So I'm just putting down the light layer for the fog. And then I'm going to come in the sort of the midground of this picture. We've got what almost looks like, if you look at the value bar, it's sort of a 3 or so. So I'm going to start as if it were a gesture sketch, starting to put in another layer that captures the shapes of the trees. And then coming into the foreground, we're getting into our really dark. So then we'll be adding additional graphite. There were some printmakers that were quite popular in BC for many years. I mean, you can still buy their cards, actually, Margraph prints, and they were practically all these atmospheric perspectives like this, because the coast, you see it so often on the coast with the water and the mountains and the trees, the different layers of light and dark. Now, if, for instance, I took my 6B and I wanted, then I could show you, just because it's 6 times, it's just super soft, you get the darkness a lot more quickly. And we always, again, I always ask the kids, so what are pencils made of? Well, wood. I said, Dan, what else? And they say lead, because we always talk about lead pencils. Of course, it's not actually lead, it's graphite. It's a mineral. And the way that they add clay to the graphite, and the more clay they add, the harder the pencil is. So right now, this is a very impressionistic image that I have. I have in my bag of tricks tonight, I brought some other things I wanted to show you because these are some other tools. I think last week you used and got the, sorry, I'm moving my hand until I can find, there we go. I find where it fits in the screen. The plastic eraser, vinyl eraser, which you know, it's great. You can use a sharp knife to get it so that you can pull out very, very narrow areas. The other thing I've brought tonight is a smudge stick. Wait a second. I'm looking. This is like, you know, when you have to do a mirror image and you move it around. There you go. Okay, so this is a smudge stick. Oh, somebody's got one there. Yeah, which is great, great. And if you don't have a smudge stick, the other thing I use Q-tips. You can use a Q-tip. Out in the field, I've been known to use my finger quite often. And then of course, the other thing you can use is just a little piece of tissue like this. And if you use your smudge stick and blend it, if you blend it in a circular motion, you really get, what we're doing is moving the graphite around on the paper. And you get that lovely, especially for an image like this, you get that wonderful smooth technique here. The other name for these, smudge blending stick, if you're looking for it, that's the easiest name. Its other name is a tortillon, these paper things. And again, I quite like the little Q-tip, does the job as well. Now what we can do too, once we've got this smoothed out like this, is we can go over, because in the foreground you can see that the trees are really clear relative to the ones in the two layers behind. And so we can take our pencil and we can add the shape of the fir tree. Sorry, it is a part of the pine family, but it's not a true pine, this fir tree. And bring that into the drawing as well. The Christmas tree shape.
Can you talk for a second about the smudge stick? What am I supposed to be doing anything to take care of it? Do I clean the black off of it?
Well, that's a good question. Now yours started narrow like that. What have you been peeling it off in between?
No.
It came that size. So they do
Yes.
come in different sizes. And you know what? To be honest, I have up until now used Q-tips and tissue paper. And I was introduced to this relatively recently. Now they peel off, but as you say, if you don't clean it, you have this fairly, well, you've got a lot of residual graphite in there, which can be fun if you want to add graphite to something. But I'm going to do some research, unless somebody else has used them a lot and knows. You can probably, I think you could cut off the tip if you wanted to start clean, as if you were whittling something. You could do it that way to clean the end off.
So far, I just roll it on my soft eraser, but it doesn't do a great job.
Go.
It doesn't do a great job.
One of the things, and something I meant to, well, I was going to bring up this evening. A lot of the techniques we use, of course, there are things that have correct ways of using them, but a lot of techniques in drawing we come to over time just because we've used different things. I have a graphic design background, so one of the tools we used to have, and I'll bring it for another class, it's a little metal guide that actually has shapes cut out of it. Separate, this is a sort of separate from the, talking about the smudge stick, it's more from in the eraser family, but you can use the guide and use it to cover the rest of your drawing while you erase out an area. There are so many, if you're like me, an art store is a very dangerous place for me to go. There's just so much cool stuff. And there are lots of different things that do the same thing as well. So that's where your personal preferences come in, and learning how to use the tools, or finding your little bag of tricks, the things that you like to work with.
Excuse me, could you
Yeah.
uncover the picture for a minute? Because I didn't get that in my email.
Oh, sorry, which,
The
the picture that of the just the one that's just right here?
the one that we're doing right now.
Yeah, so you can't see it at all on the screen, or?
Well, is there more to it than about an inch?
It's a
or-
very, no, sorry,
okay.
that is, it's hard.
Okay,
And
okay,
apologies
that's it
if you
then.
didn't get that. And
Yeah, okay.
it's a very narrow, it is like a little very narrow window, and it was
Okay.
really just to show the layers. And I can send it again, Joe, I can send you a copy if you, and what, I don't know if you can see from that one on the screen, but there is a tiny little eagle right in the middle, flying right there. There's a little black dot. So,
Is it possible to zoom in on what you're doing a little bit
Yeah.
on your drawing?
yeah, I'll see if I can. Okay, Jeff. Oh, there we go. Hang on. And then I have to figure out, this is like pat your head, rub your tummy, and do it in the mirror. Hang on. Okay. Yeah. Oh, there. That's cool. All right. So what I've done, I just, you saw I started, because I was just using the one pencil too. We started with the layer at the top, and then just, I moved down, and you've got the layer in the, kind of this ghostly layer in the middle here. And then the darker layer at the bottom. I do like my smudge stick, and again, I normally use the tissue. I like creating that nice sort of soft shading and then adding the line work on top. I find that quite satisfying. Okay. Now we're going to move in a little bit more to the compositional elements that I wanted to talk about tonight. So here we have one of Robert Bateman's pictures called Call of the Wild. And one of the reasons I chose this one is because it has it's such a strong use of directional line. So if we start talking about composition and looking at our drawings and how we decide to tell the stories in our pictures, this one, if you look at the line that's coming in from the upper left, it's a very strong directional line that brings our eye into the picture. And then we've got the wonderful call of the wild. I mean, you can just about hear that eagle. And you've got the strong right-hand line of the larger part of the tree. And so just imagine if you flip that eagle around in your mind, would you find it as satisfying? Like if you turned the bird from a compositional point of view. There's something sort of circular in this, isn't it? Because your eye comes down from the top left, and then we've got the bird, the eagle, and then you have the large tree on the side, which it's circular. It keeps our eye going round and around and around that image. And you might think, okay, well, that's the way the branches were, but how you choose to crop the image is that's the artistic choice of the person doing the drawing. So that's you getting to tell exactly how, because presumably that tree is much, much bigger, but this is the focus that he chose. And then the other thing, of course, we were talking about the eagle and its habitat. There you have the perfect example of the bird needing to be just so high up, and with that clear 360-degree vision so that they can spot prey, look out for, well, not, they're apex predators. So they don't have so many predators that they need to worry about. We'll talk about that a bit later. There are other things that they need to worry about, but yeah, I like this image just because it is the eagle in its element. This next slide, I've taken the same image and I want you to notice, so here we're going to be doing a line exercise, which is something that I do whenever I'm out in the field teaching the nature sketch. When you break it down like this and you don't worry about drawing the whole tree, you're looking at the important lines in the image. It does a couple of things. It's a hand-eye coordination thing with the line exercise, because you're looking at angles and you're looking at lines. And these are just so important to your drawing. So one thing we can do with this one, I don't know if you can do it from your page, it's a little bit like a muscle memory thing. If you just draw, like just take your pencil, you don't touch the screen, but you just move the pencil down the main line on the right, for instance, and then you just move your pencil along the other lines. You're not actually drawing at this point. You're just tracing these in the air. It's a virtual trace of the lines in this image. And that's the same thing I would do if I were out in nature as well. And we've got all these magnificent Gary Oak here, and they're fabulous because they're so gnarly and they've got all these wonderful branches, and the arbutus is another one. So when you start trying to draw something like that, just sort of doing that visual imagery first before you put pencil to paper can be a good muscle memory trick. So this next one, we're going to do a little line exercise. We're going to focus on the lines, just the lines and the angles. So don't worry about drawing the tree like the previous slide. Just focus on those directional lines. So you could, if you like, you can draw, a rectangle that's roughly the shape of the image, the painting. And if I could I have mine up again? Yeah, thanks, Jeff. There, what do we have? I'm just trying to find there it is. Okay, we have multiple cameras going on here. All right, so again, it's an exercise in hand-eye coordination through the hand to the pencil, and just drawing those lines that we see. And there's some lovely curves. And you get into some tricky foreshortening things, but again, it's the line.
We can't see the edge anymore. We can just see a blank square.
Oh, sorry, you know what, is that me? Oh, I see.
No, you're okay. It's the picture of the thing.
Okay, Jeff's gonna fix that for us. Yeah. So can that go to the, you know what, Jeff, if it could go back to, actually I can do that, hang on. No, maybe then you lose me. I was thinking if it's the full slide. Yeah, well, that's cheating, isn't it? I'm gonna make you do
Yes.
the and then that's gotta
Well,
go
it's
back.
better, but not now.
It's
Now the other
a
half's
little
cut
bit.
off.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's funny. We're working on it. We're working it here in the harbor. I'm looking out over.
Oh, it's because you changed this.
Oh, me?
It's okay.
My bad. Sorry, people. I've got the lights. I can see all the lights in the harbor. It's kind of nice. It's getting a little festive out there because I got all twinkly lights around the buildings.
That should be it.
Is that better? There you go. And you know what? You can now, if I just switch it to the one without the lines, Jeff, should it still be okay?
Yeah, we can see.
There, yeah, okay. We're back. Lines are back.
For some reason, and it could just be me, but it keeps going back to the photo of Angela instead of, hi, Angela. Instead of you, Sue, in your drawing.
Our microphone on.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Adventures in high tech. This is, oh, look at that. Is that better?
That's just stuck on you. Okay, so there we see everybody.
Okay.
Now it's Rebecca on.
Now somebody else is up.
Okay, it's not just me then.
No, apparently other people
Okay.
are shaking their heads. This is not good. Let's see. Okay.
It should be pinned onto you, so the class can't see your screen right now.
Now it's okay. Okay, Joe's saying good. Yeah. Jenny, is it okay? Yay. Thank you. Yeah, great. Thanks.
So we were doing the lines, but your lines seem way more detailed than the white lines were. This seems more like drawing.
Oh, I'm just getting carried away. What can I say?
Okay, because you said to do
Yeah.
it virtually in the air, and then now you're drawing something.
No, and you know what? What happened? I just kept on drawing, but really the point of the exercise is to look at the main lines, and actually when you start, I think while we were trying to sort this out, I just kept drawing lines. Probably just nervous at this end, trying to draw more lines, but it's the point was to look at the main lines in the drawing. Yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I shouldn't speak for the others, but I think we're probably mostly used to the complications of the Zoom world now. Don't worry.
Okay.
We're adults with lots of patience.
Well, this is, I've been out in the field. It sounds strange, but I have done this before, but it's been a while too. So yeah, out in we've been having tons of rain in Victoria. So I've had some very wet little adventures with my nature sketchers lately, but still fun, still a lot of fun. Okay. All righty, I'm gonna take this to, there we go. You're quite right. And you're right, and when you look at that again, those are the basic lines. And doing this exercise in the field, what I say usually is you kind of imagine like a squirrel running along, but absolutely not to do all the lines because that just gets crazy. Okay. And then just looking at this picture again now, I want to focus a little more on the texture in the trunk of the tree. And you know, we talk about Robert Bateman's style being highly realistic, but if you look closely, especially at the main trunk, you can see that it's an impression of bark. We admire it tremendously because we know it's bark and it's beautiful detailing. But he too would be the first to say, I'm not a highly realistic painter. And particularly when it comes to things like fur on animals. We see his polar bears and it looks like he's done every single, bit of fur. But when you look closely, he's done an impression of the fur. And that's true in this picture as well. I've got it. On the next slide, you can see there's just a portion of his bark there. And if you look at it, again, wonderful detailing, but it's an impressionistic detailing. And if you were very close to the painting, you could see the brush strokes. And he has absolutely captured what we see as a realistic bark texture, but it's not photographically realistic like some paintings and drawings are, but it still has that wonderful realistic feel. And then on the left here, one of my favorite barks is from the Douglas fir. We're keeping this in the bald eagle habitat world because of course these are so important to the bald eagles. And then on the right, I've just got a review of some of the things that you covered with Val last week. And what I love about bark and texture studies is that you incorporate, especially in something like the Douglas fir, all these different uses of lines. And again, if we're talking about really maxing out what our pencil can do, you've got stippling, which is just the dotting on the page.
Excuse me, we can't
Yes.
see all of the review.
Oh, okay.
I have to change that.
Yeah, Jeff's on it. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah. That's going to come over. So stippling, and if you just look at the photograph of the Douglas fir, imagine, because you will be doing it in a second, imagine drawing and all the different lines that will be incorporated in a study like that. And when we talk about texture, what it really is it's a combination of lines and values. And I think nothing sort of exemplifies that much better than bark on a tree. Is it coming, Jeff?
Should be.
Yeah, must have a bit of a lag. I can tell you what they are in the review.
I can only fit the image, or if you wanted to.
Okay, well, no, you know what? I have a nice little, hang on here. I have a good review page I can share.
Oh, here. I'll put it.
In the one I printed,
Oh,
it
there
just
it
had
is,
the
yeah.
bark. It didn't have the other thing. Like only one came in the printing thing.
Okay, yes, no, and I did just send the bark to you, that's right. And on the screen now, you can see the different types of lines that you experimented with last week. And the reason I just reviewed them is I think this little bark study is just a very cool way of trying to incorporate a lot of these things. So you have the stippling, which is just, the dot, dot, dot. And then varied lines is when you go from thin to thick. Hatching is when the lines all go in one direction. Cross hatching when you go in the other direction. And then of course shading, when you're layering the graphite to get the depth of darkness or lightness that you want. And then dots and dashes. And there will be other things that you can do with your Mighty Pencil. Was there a question? Yeah. No, everyone okay? Yeah. So for this next little exercise, and what I've got, if you can see the sample of, does the bark look fairly clear to you on the screen? Great. Okay. So I just want you to enjoy playing with your values, your lines, and create the bark texture that is, and as much as you can. And it's a bit like the tree exercise. You're not going to be able to do all of it because that's a bit older, that Douglas fir. And as they get older, their bark gets deeper and they have all these wonderful crevices. I just want you to play with it and have fun trying to replicate some of the different textures that you see there.
What would you suggest that we start with?
I think, and actually, oh yeah, I'm there again. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So I would start for this, if you just put you can put a little, a bounding box so you limit yourself. Imagine if we did an entire 5 by 5 foot picture of this square. That'd be a lot of work. I like to focus on values because once you've got the values down, like we did a little bit with the atmospheric perspective, then you can layer some of the texture on top with your line work. But right now, Like if you look at the top right here, we've got a nice little dark area in here. And I would play with the shapes and the values. So that's a long way around saying I'd start with the shapes and the values.
So what type of pencil are you using right now?
I'm just using an HB. I'm using
Okay.
an HB, yeah. Interesting thing about the Douglas fir is that it was really important to First Nations as well because it's got a very high pitch content, which meant that it burnt extremely well. So it burnt very, very hot, and it also doesn't give off a lot of smoke. So if you had it in an enclosed place like a longhouse, it burnt for a long, long time, and it didn't, cause a lot of smoke. This is the one too, if you're identifying it, it's got a very distinctive cone, a fir cone that has these bracts. They actually look like little rat tails. And there's a First Nation story about a fire and all the rats scurrying and hiding up inside, taking protection inside the fir cone. So I'm just starting here with some of the darker and light areas. Can you hear my clock? No, you probably can't hear because I've got headphones on, right? We have a clock in this office and I just realized it's ticking away. Right. Another fun thing I find if you're blending your graphite, you can see where you want to add more, where you want to build up. And the other thing, I don't know if Val mentioned last week, the whole, just using your pencil, all the years I was doing a lot of graphite drawing, I was a circular drawer. And so there, again, there's not a right or wrong way. Circular in that I would do my shading this way. Same way I would blend. I would shade in a circular way. It's what you're comfortable with, how you achieve, getting comfortable with the tools, what works for you. Imagine, and of course this, in addition to being homes for eagles, these, of course, are also wonderful homes for bird life. These being the Douglas fir, sorry, I'm talking about the bark here, and insects, and lichen, and moss. There are multiple things that live on the Douglas fir and in the Douglas fir trees. And I mentioned, with the eagles, they had to, these are very popular because they will grow up huge heights so that they get the vantage points that they need. And then they also have the strength for the nest building. And if you want, the other thing, changing the angle of your pencil and the pressure is really important too, to get different effects. And in the process, you know, of really using your pencils and thinking about values again, the darkest darks, because if you look, actually on the right-hand side, there is some lichen hanging on to that. There's a little piece of lichen here, just hanging in. And there's a very dark spot. And then another technique, I think, I don't know if you talked about it last week, was the idea of drawing with your eraser. So we use our eraser to remove things we don't want, but we can also use it to draw and get those light. I have an image here I wanted to show you. This is just an example of drawing with the eraser, where you can lay down the graphite and then you pull it out. So imagine, you know, if you wanted to do a petroglyph or something, or a smooth stone. I think if I can get it in there, there's a chocolate lily I did, and that was you just putting down the graphite and then pulling it off. I don't know if Val showed you last time the, sorry, it's my hand, there we go. The kneaded eraser, this one that stretches like this. They're not very good erasers, but they're good for pulling graphite off of things when you want to have a light spot again. Can I see some of the bark? It'd be fun to have a look. Oh, lovely. I can feel it. I can feel the texture. Those are great. Those are great. Yeah. So why don't we take like a 5-minute break or so? And maybe before, are there any questions so far that people have? Anything that you'd like more information on? Yeah. Have a little break then, and then we'll regroup in 5. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. People hear me again? Great. Yeah. So again, with things like bark studies, anything that we're drawing, in fact, in nature, you're remembering to look at the lines, look at the values, look at the textures. And in nature sketch, I mean, one of the things we talk about with nature sketching is that the nature journal is your very personal, bit like a written journal, that you record what you see in nature. And we often will add, or one can often add, you know, notes about if you wanted to remember what the colors were like, what the textures were like. Yeah, I'm in there now. Okay. So again, bark, one of the fun ones, because it's just got so many things that you can work with, play with. Contemplate, it's a pretty meditative thing when you're out in nature, looking at something closely and really seeing it, and really trying to see how the direction of the light affects the values on a subject. So now I'm going to move to this picture by Robert Bateman, The Return. And I just want to take this opportunity to have a little discussion with you about the compositional elements that you see in this painting. And I invite you to unmute and if you have, you know, impressions, what sort of comes to mind first with this painting? What strikes you about it? Jump right in there.
I think the way the two eagles are facing each other, I see sort of an oval shape around them and between them.
Yes, it's a wonder, because if you turn either of those eagles the other way, and it takes your eye out. So if the eagle you know, you can see the one that's landing, the return, coming back to the nest, facing, if the other eagle were looking out of the picture on the right-hand side, our eye would go right out. This way, as you say, it's got this wonderful sort of circular movement between the eagle on the left and the eagle on the right. And then back to what we were saying about directional line. What do you notice about this one in terms of the directional line? Those lines, again, bring your eye on the left-hand side. You've got that strong vertical line that brings your eye down towards the eagle on the left. On the right-hand, sorry, I've got it reversed, apologies. On the left-hand side, you've got that curving branch that brings your eye into the nest. And then you also have that strong vertical. And we'll be talking very shortly about rule of thirds. And you'll see that none of this is really, while the tree is shaped that way, how he has composed his picture is very much something that was deliberately done. And that's something that you can incorporate in your drawings and your sketches. Here's a little example. You can see we also have those really strong positive and negative spaces in this picture. You've got on the left-hand side, you can see where the sky is in behind those clear spaces, strong positive, negative. And then, as you were saying, this nice circular movement. And those are all things to consider in an illustration or in a drawing. So in this slide, I've got a collection of other pictures by Robert Bateman, and I've put these ones together because I wanted you again just to see the incredible strong use of directional line. If you look at the mountain goats on the left-hand side, look at the sheer cliff. Those lines are drawing you up. The vertical lines are drawing our eyes to the subject, the white. And then of course that one, the contrast of the dark rock and the white animals is another very, very powerful compositional element or technique. You see the same thing with the raven in the next little picture. You've got that really strong diagonal line and the angle of the snow, and then that black raven against the white snow. Our eye is drawn by the diagonal lines. And the top one, same thing. We've got 3 totem poles in a row that lead our eye to the subject. And in this instance, you could say that the totem pole in the foreground is also, you know, a powerful subject, but it leads our eye into the black bear. And the bottom one with the elk in the snow, that contrast, and then you've got that lovely line of the hill, the white snow, bringing our eye into the focal point of the elk in the lower left. So this is just an example of directional line in composition. So here we are back to the return. And if we break it down the way you did last week with your eagle portrait, you can see that you can break it into these basic shapes again. You've got that wonderful oval for the nest on the left, and then you've got all the cylinders that make up the different branches coming in. And then on the right, I've just used that as an example to show how you can divide your page. Because if you look at the top of the eagle's nest, it's just about halfway through the image. So we're actually going to do, we're not going to do a detailed sketch like you did with Val last week. We're focusing more on a gestural kind of sketch, but we're going to use the same techniques where you use the shapes that you can see and the angles. And so for the next drawing, we're going to put it all together. That's the sample there. Now I can leave that on, or I can go to this. Let's see, no, I have to go back up. I can go up to the, this one here, and we'll just, like a gestural drawing, but start like you learned last week with sort of dividing. We're going to start with our landscape shape with our bounding box. Okay. And then if you draw just, and remember we just with the scaffolding, you just do a light lines for your scaffolding. So a light line across the center, which was sort of the top of the nest. And if you divide your picture in half again, very, very lightly, you'll notice that the eagle on the left is just about a quarter, and the eagle on the right is a quarter on the other side. And those give you those guidelines again to build up your sketch. So we're going to do a loose drawing of this one, using some of the techniques you've already learned. And needless to say, in this example, a bit like the branches on a tree, you do not have to do all the twigs in the nest there. That would be a really, that would take us the full time just to do the nest. It's got a lot of detail. And you can look again and see, okay, where does the nest end? This spaceship oval shape goes around like this. And we've got the line, strong line, directional line, bringing us in from the upper left. The remarkable, you may have heard that the bald eagle is the champion nest builder in the bird world. That I think there was a nest in Florida, in St. Petersburg, that was just some astounding width and depth, and yeah, 1963. I did write this down because it's just so amazing. nearly 10 feet wide, 20 feet deep, and 4,400 pounds of sticks. Now the average, there is an average, but the average is pretty impressive too. The average is 5 to 6 feet for a nest and 2 to 4 feet high. And they build them with large sticks, and then they fill the cracks with soft material like moss and grass, and they line the nest with lichen and feathers and green sprigs. And the other cool thing is that eagles are monogamous, and so they will mate for life. They've been known to live up to 35 years, and they will come back to the same nest year after year. And they just keep adding material to it. Small wonder that they get so heavy. And they do actually bring down trees as well. But quite amazing builders.
We have, people have built platforms for them here in Saskatchewan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so then, it's a good point, Angela, because, I think of them always on the coast. I always think of coastal, they use the trees. Of course, in some places they do actually nest on the ground as well, they also will nest on cliff faces. So, and I don't know if you've seen the osprey. The osprey also have these amazing nests. The nice thing about gesture is that you can do establishing lines, establishing scaffolding. This is the way that you can start. I'm looking and I think, oh my goodness, my eagle is like way out of, so I'm just going to go over those lines and put him where he's supposed to be. But you can go over them. And if they're light, you erase, and if it's the scaffolding for a more finished piece of work, then you erase the scaffolding that you put in place there. Now, apparently, I think Val mentioned last week that it wasn't that long ago that the bald eagle was actually endangered because of DDT, and Rachel Carson's Silent Spring had a huge impact in their recovery because of the realization of what pesticides were doing to the egg. It made the shells not as, they weren't hard like they were supposed to be. The other predators they have, of course, I think I mentioned these are apex predators. So they're the ones at the top of the food chain, but man has been shooting them and continues to see them as a competitor for certain things and poisoning them. And there is a certain amount of fratricide as well. They will actually, if they have, depending on the number of eggs, they usually have 2 to 3, but they will get rid of one if there's too many. Now this is quite a messy sort of gesture interpretation of this one. If we were to do this like we did, the atmospheric picture, I would start with the values again and build the values up under the nest so that you could get the shape of it, because it's the values that give our shapes, it turns our shapes into forms. And then the details that we were practicing in our texture, you could add to the branches and the tree, this tree branch here. And build it up that way. Now, if you were, you wanted to do a really detailed drawing and you wanted to capture this in a more realistic way than what we're doing right now, again, I'd start with the values. I would, the branches are white. I would have my dark values, and then I would start pulling out some of the white with my vinyl eraser to get the sticks. And then you can go in with something like the F or an H, a harder pencil, and do some more sort of scaffolding around the branches. Use your harder pencil. We could have spent the entire class just on this picture, but we're covering more material. We're working on our compositional elements tonight. I do like this drawing with the eraser. I just find it very satisfying that you can go in and pull out details and can I have a peek at some of the work? No worries. This is oh, nice. I see your bark there. Oh yeah, great. Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm seeing some nice use of values and lines. And you know what? This is quick, right? We're not, if I were doing this at home and say preparing something that I wanted to show you, I would be taking a lot longer. We're covering a lot of material, and the gestural sketch allows us to capture essence and shape at this point. So let me see, I'm going to see if I can find, oh yeah. This is, let's see if I can fit this one in here. Okay, this is one of the ones I did earlier that was a little bit more detailed. And then I was playing with that guy too. The nest actually lends itself really nicely to gesture. But the tightening does, when you can go back in over one like this where we've got the mixed values, and you can smooth out, move some of the graphite around, and then you can work on it, you can work on it some more to pull out highlights. Yeah. All righty. The next thing I want to show you, and it actually pertains to all the things we've been, let's see, I'm going in the wrong direction. No, I'm still going in the wrong direction. Here we go. We looked at that and looked at that. Okay, back to this slide where we were focusing on the directional lines before. And I want, to invite you guys to, what else do you notice about the position of the subject in these pictures?
It's off center.
Off center, yes. Rebecca, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Off center? Yeah. And even more than off center, because that is exactly right. It's one of these rules, and we're going to look at the rule of thirds now. That's been around for a long time. I mean, they first wrote about it in the late 18th century as a compositional trick or technique. And for whatever reason, for the human eye, it balances the image. So if you look at each one of these, our eye is drawn into the mountain. I keep on saying sheep, but they're goats. These are mountain goats on the left. the raven, the black bear, and the elk, because they all have, he's using the rule of thirds for every one of these pictures. And there I'll just show you with two of them. The rule of thirds is where you divide an image up into 9 equal rectangles. And you may have noticed on your phone or your camera that sometimes, depending on the phone you have, when you're taking a shot, they have the rule of third comes up. So for composition, they suggest, I mean, this trick is that the focal point should be close or on one of the intersections. So if you see where the mountain goats are, they're right on the upper right intersection there. If you look at the bear, he's very close to the intersection on the lower left. The elk, our eye is drawn, and it creates a balance in the image. And then you couple that with the use of lines. And if you go online and you look at rule of thirds, they analyze all sorts of pictures. So it's a very conscious technique of cropping your picture in that way.
So when I draw, I tend to draw something in the center of my page. Completely
Yes.
wrong. You want to be
No.
off center, as
No.
Rebecca said.
No, not wrong.
Well,
Rules, the good thing is that rules, you have to learn the rules so that you can break them. That's another thing. So the rule of thirds it's a trick. It's a compositional trick. You can use it, and it does have this impact where your eye is drawn into those intersections, those points where they intersect on the upper left, upper right, lower right. But Voice of Fire is a line that goes right through the middle of and it's not a realistic picture, but that's not such a good example. You can get a different impact by putting something smack in the middle. It can have a different kind of drama. It might not be as balanced, but it can also be another way of drawing. It's not that it's wrong. It's just that this is a compositional trick.
but an easier way to think of it, suddenly when Rebecca said off center, I went, oh, that's what it means by rule of thirds. You're not putting something right in the center.
You're
You're
not.
thinking to the
That's
side or the up or the bottom.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I find when I'm taking, photos, I'm always looking for the focal point in my photo. I do a lot of photography, is something in one of those interstices for the rule of thirds. And for whatever reason, it creates drama in your something in the middle of a page, depending on what you're doing, could be a different kind of impact. But this particular rule seems to apply. It just, if you look at the elk, our eye is drawn to that elk. He's in the foreground, the contrast, but Robert Bateman has put him there very, very consciously. And he's put the raven there very, very consciously. If the raven were smack in the middle, it would have a different impact. And you can imagine that by moving things around in your mind of the pictures. So. Okay, I'm just going to the next slide here. Yeah, and I'm using, this is an example again, where if you look at the return, the eagle flying in on the left-hand side is very much, our eye is drawn to it because it's of where it is. And then we've got this lovely circle as well between the eagles. And it's a circular movement that goes around and around. Turn that second eagle to the right. And it's something I actually illustrate kids' books as well. And if you turn, when you're talking about page turns, you turn the animal to the right, that takes your eye off the page. It's an intentional thing. Like if you want to keep moving through a picture book, you have the animal looking out. So it has quite an impact on us. This keeps us in the center of this family unit going round and round. Now, I know I have all sorts of fun eagle facts that I wanted to share with you too. Has everybody seen an eagle in the wild? Everybody? had a chance? Thumbs up to an eagle in the wild. They're just such spectacular. Yeah, yeah. Again, just driving home yesterday, I saw two, and their wingspan is up to 6 feet. They're just such enormous, remarkable birds. Other cool thing I learned, and kind of fun facts, if they lose a feather on one wing, they will lose a feather on the other wing for balance. Like if it's a balance thing for who knew? Yeah. The other thing we see quite often in Victoria too is we sometimes know there will be an eagle because you'll see a flock of American crows, and you'll hear this, this terrible cacophony, and it's because the smaller birds they'll really harass the eagles, because of course the eagles will eat smaller birds. And the other thing I've witnessed is watching an eagle take down a seagull, a glaucous winged gull, and that's a big, big bird. So you will also get the seagulls sort of harassing they harass each other. The eagles will try and get food from otters and other birds, but you will get surprisingly small birds that will go after the eagles as well. Okay, just another thing for you to think about with compositional elements. I've taken these 3 different views of an eagle's nest, and the one on the left, we would have to be on, one of those buckets they lift up in a truck so that we could be looking straight at it like that. The one on the lower right, if we're talking about format and point of view, I like to call that a worm's eye view. You're looking from the ground up to the nest. And the other one at the top is kind of funny because that's a bird's eye view of an eagle's nest. So it's looking down on it. So when we're talking about composition and some of the things that you can consider in your drawing, because coming back to the idea that you get to tell the story that you want with your drawing, whether it's a little sketch out in nature or whether you're doing a formal drawing, it's up to you. So you get to choose the point of view. Do you want it to be, eye on? Do you want it to be looking down? Changing the perspective gives you a different picture. Now, this is not a bald eagle, I realize. We're doing Arctic next year, but I do love this picture. And the reason that I chose this one is because it works well with this idea of how you tell your story. So when we look at a picture, this painting by Robert Bateman, The Arctic Family, we see a family of polar bear. But as the artist, you get to choose. You could choose a different format. Instead of doing landscape, you could do a portrait. And I've broken this one down. So if you look at the portrait shape on the left, it's no longer a story about a polar bear family. Now it's a story about a single polar bear mom. And that could be how you choose to do your drawing. You actually get to, it's like zooming in, zooming out with a camera. You as the artist gets to decide. The landscape one is the story of a family. And then the little square on the right is the story of 2 bear cubs, all within the same thing. You could go right up and just have one head in the ice and focus, it could become a much more dramatic story about climate change if you were looking at the ice and the ice melting back. But again, just the point that it's, you have this incredible control over how you make your picture. So for this one, getting back to our bald eagle and just choosing how to tell our visual story, I'll invite you. So what are a few ways that we could focus? If you wanted to do a drawing of this, what are some of the different ways that you could choose to draw this picture? If you weren't doing a full picture of it, like if we're talking about our format again. and our composition. I'm making you work and it's tired. It's getting late, isn't it? I really feel for you in Toronto. That is something. Any thoughts?
Could you do a study, Jenny, here, could you do a study just of the, say, it's fascinating for me anyway, looking at the screen and seeing the talons in the fish, or a close up. I don't know if I'm missing the point here, but a story about that part of it, or expanding out to
Exactly.
see it in.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at, Jenny. Yeah, know that so, and I go the next step here. We've got, okay, here are the little breaks. I don't know if you can see them. So the one on the left is just the talons, those mighty talons, and the fish. And the one on the upper right, it's a close-up instead of the whole bird. So just to underscore that you have complete control over how you tell the story with anything that you're doing when you're drawing. So let's see, I think for the last one here. All right, there we go. So for fun, we're going to do some food. We're going to do some eagle food. And this one we have time, so you can spend a bit more time on it. Can you see that clearly enough to work from that picture on the screen? And before we go any further, this is a good opportunity for questions too. If you have any questions about, we've covered a lot tonight, you can watch it again. And the good thing is that throughout the course, these things are going to come up again. Like we'll be coming back to these, circling back to these things. So they kind of settle in, hearing them more than once. So. Okay.
Actually, I have a quick.
Oh, sorry, Jenny. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm slow to get my mute button off. Quick question. So last week we had used the shapes more, and we used that again here briefly with our gesture sketch, or did we? Yeah, with the last. So here, would you suggest we would start with the shapes, or dividing it up, kind of into pieces, or?
I think in general it is a really good way to approach drawing, is to always look at the basic shapes. So we can review that for this one. So if we're looking at this, let's see, there we go. I would start. So quite just what you said, actually, that you start with your shapes and you look also at the negative spaces. And we know we talked about the negative and the positives. In this case, you've got the blue water behind. So you have shapes of water between the fish and the outside of the picture. So those are all things that factor into how you capture the image. So I would start by making my rectangle, my bounding box. And then in this instance, the same way I drew the line across the middle to show where the nest was on that sketch. I would start with this one by seeing how much of the fish takes up. So you've got this little probably line here at the bottom, and then you've got the top of the fish. It's eyeballing and saying, okay, it's about a half quarter down. And also I would then put the shape of the fish, which is this lovely long, it's pointed at the top, but it's a lovely long oblong. and the overall triangular shape of the tail. And if you want to include the talons, I mean, you've got that kind of this fairly distinct triangular shape coming right into the fish's head and down the side of the body. These massive, massive legs going up. Those, I don't know, I think Val left you with talons last week. They're pretty spectacular, these talons. And I have a naturalist who brought in talons for my kids to see. He actually had, so they could feel what they were like. And you notice how lightly I'm working as well, very lightly to start, just establishing the scaffolding of the image. And once you've got the basic shapes, that's when you go back in and you refine. And that's, you know, when we started the class with the some of the line exercises that it's eye, hand, eye, when you're refining your shapes. I don't know if anybody has done blind contour drawing before. If not, I will. It's a very good exercise too. I might introduce when we do our next thing, so you can, or I can send you. I'll send you just a note on it, because that's one where you don't even look at the paper. There's partially there's blind contour and there's partially sighted, or yeah, almost blind contour, where you don't even look at the paper and you just draw. So you're really focusing on what you're looking at. And if you look online too, you see pictures of these eagles. They must be just incredibly, incredibly strong, because they pick up relatively large mammals as well. And I think I mentioned they are solitary, except for when the fish runs and you see tons of them together, and they'll be fighting over the fish, and they'll be fighting with crows over the fish.
And their talons lock for a little while when they first hit prey. And when there's a salmon run or when they're hitting fish in the water, they have to be careful, because sometimes the fish is in shallow water, and before they can get it out of the water, it goes into deep water, and they can be stuck in the water or even drown.
Wow, that's really interesting. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Yukon, and there's, thousands of eagles in the Yukon and Alaska. So I've seen an eagle in the water, but I've not seen one like do the blue. I've seen it on video.
But the locking is very interesting. The fact that the talons can lock. So both a blessing and a curse, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah. It means they don't drop their prey, but it means they can't drop their prey.
No, yeah, regardless of what's happening. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
And you think that eagles are majestic until you see them walking, and then they look goofy. Because they have no knees. They look really silly when they're just walking around.
Well, we'll give them flying credit then. It's majestic flying credit. Oh, well, it's a bit like my children's story that came out last year was about blue-footed boobies, and one of the reasons I chose the blue-footed booby was because they get such a bad rap they actually booby is bobo, it means is fool in Spanish. And they are actually, so again, such incredible fishers, but very awkward on land. Yeah. Directional line too, while I'm looking at this, is always important to, if you look at the talons, you can see while we build up form with shading, the direction of the line that you use is also important. It's a lovely red at the tail of this salmon. I just went on the island last Friday. I went to see part of the salmon run in Goldstream Park, and there were eagle in the trees, just watching. So how long were you in the Yukon? You grew up there, or?
Yeah, born and raised.
Okay, my daughter, she's working, she's a graphic designer in Vancouver, and just got work with a new company. And of all things, they're going up to the Yukon next month as it's a small group, it's a small design company. So she's coming over to the island to get our Sub-Zero clothing because I've lived on and off in, Ottawa and the Scandinavia for a number of years, and so have lots of cold weather clothing. But you're just not prepared for it in Victoria or Vancouver.
Oh, and it's a different kind of cold. So.
Yes, yeah. We get endless mileage, don't we, out of cold, but it's so true. And people say, oh, it's not that cold on the West Coast, it's so temperate, but we truly have a damp, bone chilling. It's a different kind of cold altogether.
Yeah, I'd rather have -40 than -10 in the damp.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? How's it going? I'd love to see. We've got some just at this point, and again, these are journeys. These are all journeys, and you've had a very short period to do this, so no worries about where you feel you're at. Oh, nice. This is, it doesn't matter, adults, kids, this is the part that thrills me always, is to see what comes in such a short time. Well done. Yeah. So next week you have Val will be back, and you're moving on to the Mighty Moose. So you'll be working with very different shapes again. And then I'll come in the last week, and we'll do more on habitat. But we'll also look into some of the other, I mean, we've touched some of the compositional elements today, and we'll review those, but there'll be other ones that we'll continue to look at. I think I've given mine 3 fins on one side here. And I've given him a plumper salmon to take home for dinner as well. So as we wind down for tonight, are there any other questions about what we've covered? Again, we covered a fair bit. I do like the silence too, of people working away on their drawings. That's always nice.
Actually, I have a question, and you mentioned that you offer longer term outdoor, or you maybe will again, classes, nature sketching out of doors. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Where are you based?
Well, I'm here in Victoria. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Jenny, you look so familiar. Have we met before? No?
I don't know. I don't think so, but yeah,
Okay,
it could be.
one of those faces, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we do. And we're looking now, we're really pushing end of season here, because this time of the year, it's just really unpredictable,
Oh, yeah.
for weather.
Yeah.
So the next classes will be in spring 2022 and
Okay.
fall. Yeah, and if you keep an eye on the website, those will be posted. And generally what we do, I mean, it's changed. I've been doing it since 2018, and I've done everything from 6 to 8 week courses. We're probably going to settle on a 4-week model. And that's where you'd be going to 4 different destinations, and using, we use this nature sketch book that we have at the gallery. And yeah. Thanks.
Do you know if there's going
Thanks
to
for
be
interest.
another watercolor class coming up online?
There
two last year.
Did you do the one before with?
Yeah, I did 1 or 2 of the sketch classes, 2 maybe last year, and then 2 of the watercolor classes online. They're just such a great
Wonderful.
de-stressor after work these days.
Yeah, oh, and I hear you. Well, and that's something else. I mean, in general, this is one of the things, whether we're in the field or whether we're working like this, there's a meditative quality to drawing once you get into it. And you really, I think play is an important thing too, because while we're learning as adults, we need to remind ourselves, get back into the head set of when we used to draw for fun. And there's so many layers of critical eye, the criticism that we bring to our work and stuff. And I think just to let yourself play and enjoy it. Yeah. So that's another thing. I keep an eye on the website to see what's coming up. I've had, we've done it this past year, we did in-person watercolor pencil classes, which is another, it's very compatible with watercolor as well. You have the control of a pencil, but you're learning how to mix colors.
Yeah. I really enjoy the online because I'm a teacher and I really like to not have any more exposure than at work. So
Yeah.
I've appreciated the online while it's available.
It's something that's taken off for the foundation, this, not surprisingly, this past year, as it has with so many other groups. You know, I actually belong to a writing organization out of Los Angeles, and in the past have gone there in person. And of course, now we have, I don't know, 7,000 people meeting online for a conference. It's like what you can do
Oh, wow.
is phenomenal. Yeah, yeah.
And of course, I can't remember her name right now, the young woman that did the online classes last year. She's that Caroline? Is it Caroline?
With the painting classes,
Yeah,
Jen, was it
Jen.
Jen?
Jen.
Jen or Jess?
Yeah, she was lovely.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, yeah. A very accomplished artist, watercolors. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And thank you, Toronto, for coming in. We have been discussing things like, you know, how best to share this across the country and make it sort of accessible to everybody. And it's a tough one because Saturdays are, you know, might be an option, but I mean, you people usually want their Saturdays too. So we will continue to try different time periods as well to see what works. Yeah.
Yeah, I took
Carol, are
I took a watercoloring course as well with Jen, and she was wonderful. And that course was it was 9 to 11 Toronto time, so that was late. So that was pretty late. So I was pleasantly surprised that this class starts half an hour earlier. Half an hour makes a big difference. We finish at 10:30, so it's
So Olga, what time was her class again?
the watercoloring class, I think it was 6 to 8. So in Toronto, it was 9 to 11.
Okay.
Yeah, last year, all of the classes were 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., which is why I came at 6 last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I assumed you'd done the 5:30 for the Easterners.
We were trying to find a happy spot somewhere.
Mhm.
So Olga, you're in Toronto as well?
Oh, I'm in where am I? Victoria. I live in
Oh,
Victoria.
You're in Victoria, and Olga, I think maybe is back
In Toronto.
Ontario.
Yeah,
In
Toronto. Mhm.
Wow. Well, thank you for joining us from this time of night. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Thank you. Well, I'm looking forward. Well, again, Val next week, and then me the last week, and we'll be offering. We're going to be offering theme-based or thematic courses in 2022, which with quite a range. So I think there'll be some interesting offerings for people to choose from. But I will keep, if the 5:30 is a preference, this is good. Yeah. Any other questions for tonight? Yes. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I saw a hand, but maybe it wasn't a question. Yeah, just waving. Yeah. Good. Well, have a wonderful week. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks for coming in tonight. I really enjoyed working with you.